Hi there, Mark here again. Welcome to part 2 of my build guide for the Carisma Bulldog Deluxe Builders Kit on the SCA1E 2.1 spec chassis. We got to this point at the end of part 1, which is the end of parts bag D, and you can see this is the front axle assembly. So let's move on to parts bag E, which it says is the rear axle assembly. Actually, we've already built up the rear axle. This is what it looks like. Obviously this is just finishing off by putting in the drive shafts and the hex converters there for the wheels. So let's just get on with that. So open up all the parts in parts bag E. Start off with one of your rear axles. It says to apply grease, but I don't think we need to because we're using bearings in this kit. So basically just pop your bearing over the axle. Then you've got this tiny little shim, very thin shim that goes over that. Get your plastic axle end and poke that into that. Hopefully that bearing will engage. Well, it's in, but it certainly didn't click into place, that's for sure. Okay, so anyway, just carry on with this. Got your little 9.8mm pin. Push that through the hole in the shaft and then locate that slot in the hex over the pin. When that's assembled, you need to then slot the other end of the axle into the case, and I think again we need to rotate that until it engages into those holes in the diff. Okay, push that all the way on, and then it's simply a matter of the two little 3x6 screws, one in the top hole and one in the opposite side. And when you've done that, repeat the same process, the exact process for the other side of the axle, and that's the end of step E. And moving on to parts bag F, there's all the parts. As you can see, we're going to be making up all the suspension links, of which there are 8 in total, so 2 of each for step 1, 2, 3 and 4, and it's good to know that these diagrams here are to scale. So first thing we're going to do is just get any of the rods to the plastic ball connectors and screw one onto each of all of those threads on all the bars. They are quite tight, so it might be useful to actually put a screwdriver or something through the holes to give you a bit more leverage. So basically do all 8, make sure each end is done up all the way and that the ends are in the same plane, so the holes are pointing in the same direction, like so. Okay, so once you've got all of the ends on all 8 links, you'll see in the diagrams that every one of the links has got the standard 5.8 ball link, which is that thing there. So you might as well, for ease, just go ahead and pop in one onto every of the 8 links. Again, I just push down on the bench and it just pops in. So do that for all 8. Next, find the front upper links by again matching it up to the diagram, and this time in the other end we're going to put in the different ball link, which is a 5.8 extended, so you can see it's got that kind of flat end on it, or the straight end, and all you need to do is put that on the bench and pop through again. You can see that matches with the diagram. Make 2. The front lower links are the longest of the bars, and again this is just the standard 5.8 ball link, and so both ends of this will be the same. Just pop that on and obviously do the same for both. The rear upper links are the shortest, and again we've got that extended ball link that's going to go into the other end. Again make 2 of. And finally the rear lower links again have got the same standard ball end at either end. Again make 2 of those, and that's step F, or bag F, finished. On to parts bag G, and I've already done the first half of the step. You need to build 2 of these drive shafts. It says drive shaft, I'd call it a prop shaft. But yes, it's probably the fiddliest or the trickiest part of the build so far. A few things to note on this is not to get that pin there, the 2x10, mixed up with the 2x10.8mm, and also that 2x10 pin there has got a flat in the middle, which is really important to get that aligned correctly, as we'll see now. So I'll show you how I made this one up. So get your 2 halves of the shaft, and then you've got that hole in the part that slides in and out. You've got to get that lined up with the slot, as hopefully you can see there. Then you've got the shorter of the little shafts, and I hope you can see there's a flat in the middle there. Try that again, and that flat has got to be pointing towards this end of the prop. So if we can get it in, okay, with the flat, I think I've got it pointing upwards, because now you've got the little grub screw, and you want to get some thread lock on that and then push it through and screw it into that shaft, and it should engage with the flat that's on that pin. What I'm going to do to make sure is just to loosen it off just a fraction, and then make sure I can't push the pin through, because that flat is stopping it from falling out, because it's butting up against that grub screw. Yeah, I think that's correct. And just to get this nipped up tightly, I'm going to put something through the hole in the other end of the shaft and just tighten that grub screw up, because we do not want that falling out. Next thing I'm going to do is get the spring, and I'm going to kind of wind this over the end of this end of the shaft. It's best if you kind of separate the coils and try and kind of wind it on. As I said, it is really fiddly, this is. And then once it's on and it's into that groove, I've got to move it back onto the shaft. Again, trying to get one end of the coil over. Hopefully you can see that there, and then wind it round, and eventually you should be able to get it over the collar like so. Now you want to get the joint that's got a lip on it, so there's a lip on the end there. Apply some grease into the holes and the little slots, and get your bar with a hole in it. Insert that into the end with the hole aligned with the slots, as I hope you can see there. Try and pop that into the end of the drive shaft, aligning all the holes up, which is easier said than done. And you've got your 10x8 shaft, and that's got to go in the hole, push it all the way through, and now we've got to try and wind that spring again over so it covers the end of the pin onto where we want it to be, into the slot. And there you go, that's the one end done. It's exactly the same for the other end of the prop shaft, but with the joint that's got no lip on the end. Pop the little bar through again and try and align up the holes. Now that damn fiddly spring, we've got to get that one in place. So there it is, ready to be fitted once we've got the end on. Again, pop the joint in, line up all the holes, your final 2x10.8 pin, and just put that spring over and into the groove as we did with the other end. And there you go, there's your two prop shafts complete. Onto parts bag H, and I've got to say there are a lot of parts in this bag, lots of different components, a lot of them very similar. If you're not sure, I highly recommend that you get your ruler out and measure the parts, because it would be so easy to get one or two of them mixed up. Anyway, let's get on with step one, which is the gearbox assembly for the input and idler gears. Get this longer bar here. This one's not easy to get mixed up, it's pretty much the only one like it. And get this gear, there are 3 of these in the set, and I think what we need to do is pop that over the end of the bar, pop the little 2x7 pin through the hole, and then engage the slot onto the pin. Then you need to get the circlip or E-clip or C-clip and click that into the slot, and that will hold the gear in place. So get it somewhere near. This is going to be really hard for you to see this, but yeah. Don't know if you can see, but that's in place now. And it's simply a case of putting the 10mm bearing, one on that side and one on the other, and that's that first input gear complete. The idler gear looks nice and easy. You've got this very small pin here, which is a 5x14.7mm. You've got this gear, and it's the only one that will fit one of these 10mm bearings, one into each side, like so, and just pop that onto that shaft, and that's that. And lastly, we've got what it calls the ATT gear. Don't know what that stands for, but that's simply a case of this darker bar. It's got 2 holes in it. The smallest of the 2 holes, you put another one of those little 2x7 pins through that hole, like so. Got the same gear as we used on the first input gear, and that's got the slot or key in it, and again line that up with the pin, and the pin should sit inside the slots in the gear. And it's your 5x10 bearing goes on that end, and the tiny little 5x8 by 2.5 bearing goes on the other, and that's your 3 gears made up. Step H2, which is the central lock diff, you need this case. So get your diff locker, which is this aluminium block, and then you've got the shorter of the 2 pins that will pop in there. It's just got 1 hole in it, and then you've got the longer of the 2 shafts, and again that's got a hole in it, and that should slot also into the diff locker. Get your diff case, pop the shorter end through, it should go all the way in, and then you've got the right hand side of the case, and obviously that will going to pop over there. And now we need to get these 4 screws in. They're 2x5x10, and obviously just simply screw the 4 into the 4 holes in the case, and it should look something like this when you've done those 4 screws up. Now you need to get a diff tube spacer, which is basically just a bit of tube, and that's going to go over there, and it goes down into the diff case. You've got your 10x15 bearing, pop that over, and then we're doing this step here, which is putting this gear on. So first of all, get a little 2x7 pin and pop it through that hole in the shaft, like so, and get your little gear with the slot in it, and that slot has got to again engage on that pin that holds it in place, and we've got to hold this gear on with another E-clip or C-clip. So get your clip, pop it over the end there, and we'll just give that a bit of a nip up or a nip on with some pliers. Then there's the 5x8 small bearing, goes on the end of that shaft, and then you've just got to fit in the other diff tube spacer over the other end, pop it into the case, and then your larger bearing finishes that assembly off. So that's the central lock diff finished. In step 3, you've got to get your motor plate, which is a nice aluminium plate, and then you've got this part of the gearbox, and it's really important now to align these up as they are in the diagrams, else we won't be putting it together properly. So basically I think it looks something like that, and we've got this 1 button head screw 3x16 to put in, so I think this aligns the centre there, aligns or goes into that hole in the plate, and then I think that 3x16 screw goes down into this hole here in the case, if you can see that. Yeah, and this is quite tricky to do because the screw is actually screwing into the plastic of the case as well as into that plate. But yeah, I think I can feel it now, just engaging, and yeah, there you go, there's the end of that screw coming out the other side. So I think that's how it should go. Now we've got to put our gears into place. So the centre lock diff, you've got that bearing, you've got to engage into that housing. Should pop that into place. What I'm going to do now, while I can get to it, is to put some grease on those gears. This the idler gear goes in next, and there is a slot for the end of that shaft to go into. And then finally we've got the input gear, which we're going to put all the way down into the deepest part there. Just make sure that's all meshing up okay, and that's the end of H3. And step H4 we're going to fit on the other side of the gearbox cover. Obviously it's going to fit on quite simply like that, and now we've got to hold it into place by these 2 3x40mm screws and 3x45. Now awkwardly the holes in the plate are threaded, so we're going to have to screw these all the way through the whole length of the thread for those 2, and the 45mm long one goes in this hole here, So I'll just screw these all the way in off camera, of course. So yeah, once you've got those 3 screws screwed all the way through, so yeah, on the other side just put on the 3 M3 nylock nuts. It's quite easily with the nut driver on that one, but on these two it's almost impossible because of the shape of the case there. Don't know if you could see that, but yeah, you cannot get the nut driver on, and I've had to use a pair of pliers to nip those up, so just beware of that. And to finish the step off, we've just got a 3x18 screw that goes in this hole at the bottom here, and yeah, once that one's done up, that's the end of step H4. Step H5 is nice and simple. All we've got to do is get the ATT gear, as it was called, which is this, and we've got to pop it into the case. Obviously put a bit of grease on. That should just go beneath the other gear that's already in there. It's simply a case of getting the cover, which is this, and just pop it over and secure that with the 4 2x5x10 cap head screws. Okay, so with those 4 screws or bolts done up, we can move on to step 6 or H6, which is the slipper clutch. Get the little slipper tube, and that's got to go over that spindle and goes right into the housing. Then you've got your slipper clutch plate and put it with the lug pointing towards the housing. Then you've got what I think is the spur gear, and what I've done is you've got these friction plates. They're like fibrous, and I've actually put a little bit of glue on just to hold them in place so they don't fall off as they go on. They do locate in those 4 little cutouts, as you can see. Pop that over the spindle, the second pressure plate, and then it's just your spring, which it does say compress with a pair of pliers, which I've done. I'll pop that over. Then there's the 3x8 washer, and this is the biggest washer that was in the bag H. So pop that on, and then we just finish off with, I think it's a 3mm lock nut. I'll just nip that up for now, and obviously, as it says here, you can fine tune the clutch when your car's finished. Okay, so in step H7 we're going to install the motor. I've got this Core RC 35 turn, which should do the job, and we're also going to fit this gear cover. So we've just got the holes lined up in the slots there, through to the motor, and we've got these 3x8 screws with the 3mm washer. So just put the 2 screws in loosely at first, obviously, because we've got to get the pinion on next, and then get the set the mesh. So I can slide that back and forwards, get the included pinion, and put the grub screw in. And unusually the grub screw goes on the outside on this kit. Make sure you engage that grub screw on the flat of the output shaft. So once that's on, we've got to set the mesh, and what I'm going to do is use a bit of plastic from the bag, push the motor in towards the spur, and yeah, make sure that the teeth are meshing together between that bit of plastic, and I'm going to nip up the 2 screws. Okay, so we can remove that bit of plastic now, and yeah, I think we've got a nice mesh between the 2 gears now. Now, strangely for the cover, it shows putting 3mm washer in between the cover and the plate, and I think the reason for that is because of this screw here. It actually pushes the plate outwards, and this doesn't sit square, so I think it's to lift the plate up a bit to stop it from being twisted. But what I've done is to just remove a bit of plastic with a modelling knife from the case here to give it a bit more room, and it sits flat, so I'm not going to put those washers in, and hopefully this will be sitting closer to that plate and keep a bit more dirt and dust out. So it's just a case of popping it over, and then just 2 3/6 screws, one in this hole and one in the hole on the other side. Okay, then on to step 8, which is simply attaching these 2 brackets to the gearbox. So make sure you've got them aligned correctly. Just copy the diagram, so that goes like so. Then this piece goes with those brackets pointing forwards there, and we've just got to get them together and hold them together with these 2 3x8 screws, like so. Then get your motor and gearbox, again copy the alignment with the diagram, so it should be in this position, and this bracket then locates onto those 2 holes there. Again with 2 more of those 3x8 screws. and it should look like this when you're done. Step 9 is the last actual step in parts bag H, and all we're going to do is attach the prop shafts, or he calls them drive shafts here, onto each of the outputs. And as you can see here, you want the thicker part of the prop shaft and the end that's got the lip on it. Each one of those has got to go onto the output shafts. I have put some thread lock into these holes here, into the threads. One side is threaded and the other hole is not really fully threaded, so get the threaded side up, pointed towards you, and then kind of line it up with the hole in the output shaft. And then you've got this long grub screw that's got the thread like by the head, and the first part has no thread, it's just at the back, so that's gonna go, it should just pop in like so. And when the thread engages, obviously we need to screw it in. Give that a nip up. And the same with the other prop shaft. Again, the end with the lip on it and the threaded hole towards you. Pop it on to the other output, and you've got your other grub screw, and exactly the same as the first one. It should just slide in and then just nip it up. And it should look like this when you're finished, and when you rotate the prop shaft you can probably hear that motor is actually turning round now. So yeah, that's the end of parts bag H. And again, I think we've come far enough in part 2 of the build guide. Yeah, that was enough work for one day. So I hope you found it useful, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you on the SCA1E build guide part 3. Bye.